Hi, my name is Dr. Ellen Storm and today is the 16th of March 2025. I am here today to discuss the issue of gender in relation to the Lucy Letby case. And I want to do that because yesterday I made a placard for the protest that is going to happen tomorrow morning outside the Thirlwall inquiry at Liverpool Town Hall, which is the first of the last 2 days of the inquiry. And the placard that I made says the words at the top, "Please can we talk about gender?" And I posted it on 3 Facebook groups that are people that are interested in this evolving situation for some feedback yesterday, and I got a lot of feedback, so lots and lots of comments of different sorts, and people making suggestions, and some people liking it and some people not liking it so much. And I wanted to just respond to some of those things, also because I suppose I'm thinking maybe people will be coming up to me and saying similar things or having similar thoughts tomorrow, and it would be useful for me to be able to say, well, you could always go and watch this video. So that's why I'm here. Underneath the headline I put a picture of Lucy and a picture of a woman called Lucy Letby, who was a blonde female paediatric nurse who was convicted in the Netherlands in 2003 for 7 murders and 3 attempted murders of children in her care. And it took 7 years for her to be exonerated. She was exonerated in 2010. And exactly 20 years later, we have an almost identical situation with Lucy Letby. Lucy Letby is a blonde female neonatal nurse who has been convicted of 7 murders and 7 attempted murders. And in both cases, in Lucy Letby's case, it was shown that there was statistical misrepresentation. There was also a kind of misunderstanding in relation to some diaries that she had written, which were taken out of context, and that's the same here. So we have statistical misrepresentation of the data in relation to Lucy, and there's been a table that has circulated and was used as evidence against her that showed that she was in the unit each time an event occurred. But what it didn't show is all the events and that potentially occurred on that unit. So neonatal units are places where events happen a lot. Babies get sick, they have various sorts of deterioration, and sometimes they die. And if you work in, as I do, in paediatrics and neonates, every now and again you will have a shift where something happens. And it really depends on how you define a deterioration or a collapse, because children and babies and children get sick and deteriorate all the time, and sometimes we have resuscitations. And if I had got a table and I had put all the cases that I have seen, in the first column, I've kept a record, I have a list, I've put all the cases of resuscitations that I have attended, all the babies that have been unwell, children that have been seriously unwell that I have attended. If I did that, but I didn't include all the ones that I haven't attended, and then in the second column I put my name at the top and I say, was I there? Yes, yes, yes. Of course I was there at all of them. These are the ones that I attended. And then if I did the same in subsequent columns for all of the other people in my team, I guarantee it, there will not be one of them who was also at all of the same events that I was. I hope that makes sense. It's actually really not that complicated. And I find it quite staggering that this has been done, and it has been used in court, and it has been upheld in court as evidence of murder. I find that absolutely gobsmacking, actually, I have to say, when I looked at it. Because it's not complicated statistics. Anybody could do it. Anybody who works in, in a hospital setting could make the same table for themselves. Okay, so that's statistical misrepresentation. Then around Lucy's face on the picture, I put the names of 7 people that I believe are the key people who in some way, through their acts of omission or commission, have put Lucy in jail. And that's not to say that those people are bad people, that they did it maliciously. I'm not making a comment about that, but their actions really are the ones that have resulted in Lucy's incarceration. And they're all men. There are, as some people have correctly pointed out, women who have also testified against Lucy. I think they're bit players to an extent. So, and there's also, I would say, question marks around whether certain individuals were also in their own way surrounded by a circle of men who might have applied pressure or influenced them, or they didn't really, did they really have a choice to stand up to that or not, or what would they have stood to lose if they did, so I don't know. We had some discussion about whether certain female names should be included. Even if they were, it wouldn't really change the point that I'm trying to make, because the point I'm trying to make is one about balance of power. So you have a relatively young blonde female nurse who has been put in jail by this circle of 7 men, aided and abetted by a few women here and there. And when I see that, and it's not the first time I've seen it, and in different sort of contexts and settings, and I would say I have also been the young blonde woman, not in such an extreme case, but in that situation of being surrounded by men in power, and of having my movements and in some way my autonomy, my agency constrained by that. Yeah. So I'm speaking from personal experience as well. Anyway, what was I saying? Slightly lost my thread. I think I was saying that, yes, when I see that situation, it raises alarm bells for me. It rings alarm bells quite loudly around there is an imbalance of power here, and something else is going on. It's so quite a few people commented on the male nurses that have also been convicted, and that's interesting because it's certainly true and it has happened, and it wouldn't have made any difference if Lucy was male or not, because it was about the specifics of the specifics of the situation, whether it's the insulin or the air embolism. I'm not quite 100% sure I believe that, but yeah, maybe we'll go into that in a bit more detail in a minute. I'm going to change tack slightly here. When I did my MA in creative writing back in 2016, I wrote half. To be fair, I never finished it, but one day I might. Hope I will, if I get time. Anyway, I wrote half a novel about my great aunt, who was one of the first women to qualify in medicine in this country, in England, in 1891. And she was not allowed to practice medicine in this country at that time. She had to go to India as a missionary in order to be able to work as a doctor at all and use the skills that she had. So medicine at that point in time historically was a closed shop for women. There were no women in medicine. It was a very, very male dominated profession. And of course that's changed. I'm in it, I'm working as a doctor, but I think that it's still the case that it's very divided along gender lines. And what happened was that nursing as a profession was a way for women who were traditionally in the home to come into the workforce, and they were still really doing the same things in the hospitals that they did in the home, and they were expected to do in the home, and that was caring. And they were in the same subservient position in relation to the doctors that wives were in relation to their husbands. And that dynamic still exists. The doctors are the husbands, the nurses are the wives. The medical profession is essentially a male-oriented, male-dominated profession, and the nursing profession is a female-orientated and female-dominated profession. And yes, there are lots of women coming into medicine now, like myself, and there are men coming into nursing, but they're still a minority. And for those of us who are women in medicine, it's hard sometimes. And I know for myself that sometimes I think I display kind of more masculine traits as a doctor, that I need to be quite decisive, for example. And sometimes that's not liked. People don't want me to be decisive. They don't want me to tell them what to do. They think I'm being bossy and not empathetic enough. And that's a gender issue, because it wouldn't be said if I was a man. So, historically, going back to history, I think that there are things that we can learn from history, whether that's Lucy Letby or going back further, that might be helpful, might be informative in this case. This is a really interesting book. Small, very petite, but very interesting. And I think it was produced in the 1970s. It's quite an old school feminist book. It was produced by something called the Feminist Press, and it's called Witches, Midwives and Nurses by Barbara Ehrenreich and Deirdre English. And it's a history of the witch hunts that happened in Europe in the Middle Ages, between the 14th and 17th centuries, in the part of Europe spanning from sort of Germany across to England. And they say that they think something between 50 and 100,000 women were executed for the crime of witchcraft during that period of time. And the argument they put forward in this book is that most of those women were healers. They were traditional healers, and it was at the time when the medical profession was just beginning to emerge. It was as a male-dominated profession, and it was trying to establish itself. And these women were threatening to that. They had a lot of experience, and whether it was effective or not, let's not go there. But they were out, they were practicing, they were administering to people, and they were a threat to the emerging medical profession, essentially. And that is what they argue essentially drove the witch hunts. We talk about witches brewing potions. What we really mean is women making medicine probably at home in their kitchens, like herbal medicines, traditional medicines and things like that. So I didn't really know about these until I read this book. I kind of heard about, we read The Crucible at school. I'd heard about the Salem witch hunts. you know, in America. But I didn't really know that this had happened in Europe, and I didn't know the scale of it. You know, there were whole villages wiped where the female population was entirely wiped out. You know, women were executed, they were burned at the stake for nothing more than the crime of tending the sick. We can say that's an awfully long time ago. It doesn't apply to us anymore. But I think sometimes you know, we're still the same human beings at heart, and the same power dynamics keep raising their ugly head, their ugly heads. And so I want to suggest that we look a little bit deeper when we are thinking about miscarriage of justice. Those alarm bells that rang for me kind of said, for lots of reasons, miscarriage of justice. There are specific reasons around, you know, which I'll talk about in different videos, insulin and air embolism, and you know, the specifics. But underneath that, there's something else kind of going on, and it is about power. And, you know, one of my questions is, you know, in what way did Lucy threaten the power establishment in that organisation? Was it by the Datix forms that she submitted? Or was she just a good and easy target because of the fact that she happened to be there for all of these cases? But then, you know, she was, I believe, a hard-working person who did a lot of overtime. So there are those questions. I just wanted to leave you with those thoughts. I do consider myself to be a feminist. I'm not a misogynist, as some people said. I don't hate men. And I think men can be feminists too, because we can all recognise our positions of power. You know, I have a certain, you know, type of privilege because I'm white and educated and grew up in England, in London. And, you know, I carry certain privilege, but I also have certain ways in which, you know, I've struggled with discrimination as well, you know. So wherever we sit in the hierarchy, if you like, of power and agency, we can recognise that position, and we can make a decision whether we're going to use our structural privilege, sort of systemic privilege, if you like, you know, the bits that we sometimes don't see. We can recognise those, we can bring them into consciousness, and we can say, okay, I have had this good fortune, I am, you know, able-bodied, I've had an education, I've, you know, whatever it is, and I can try to recognise my position, not to abuse it, not to abuse my position of power, and to help those people who aren't as fortunate as me. I think we should all do that. So it's not a criticism of men to say that this is a gender issue. I hope there are some men out there who are doing sterling work to help Lucy, and thank you very much for doing that. And I hope more people will come on board as time goes on, and we'll start to understand a bit more about the issues. So I think that's all I'm going to say for now. Okay, take care. Thank you. Bye.